If moments of bravery inspire you, hit subscribe. You'll enjoy what's coming. This story takes place on a routine commercial flight, one that took off like any other, yet landed with a tail that would ripple across an entire base. In seat 12F sat a man most passengers overlooked. His clothes were worn, his eyes tired, and a small child's drawing peeked out from the side pocket of his backpack. A single father, returning from visiting family, holding on to responsibilities heavier than anything visible on his shoulders. Flight attendants passed him with polite smiles, but nothing more. Passengers stepped around him as though he were part of the carpet. Even the couple beside him barely acknowledged him. To them, he was no one, just another tired civilian. But far ahead, in row 3, a group of young Air Force officers, fresh from training, full of bravado, laughed loudly among themselves. They carried the sharpness of new uniforms and the energy of people who believed they already understood the world. They certainly believed they knew everyone who mattered in it. And none of them noticed the man in 12F. Not yet. Because at 30,000 feet, arrogance thinks it knows how to measure worth, but courage, the quiet kind, reveals itself in ways that leave even the skies themselves humbled. The single father leaned back quietly, adjusting the strap of his backpack so it wouldn't fall. His hands bore small scars, old ones, faded but unmistakable to those who knew what they were looking at. His eyes carried the weight of someone who had lived more life than he spoke of. No one asked. No one cared. No one even wondered. But fate was about to place the entire cabin in the same moment of truth. The young officers joked loudly about call signs, about maneuvers, about who deserved recognition next. To them, the world was simple rank determined worth. Everything else was background noise. One of them joked, "But no one on this flight even knows what a real call sign means." If only they knew. A sudden chime echoed through the cabin. The captain's voice came over the speakers, tight and tense. "Ladies and gentlemen, if there are any military aviators on board, please press your call button immediately." The officers in row 3 straightened instantly, their expressions shifting from arrogance to opportunity. But before they could even reach for the call button, a soft, steady click sounded from row 12. Seat 12F. The ignored single father had pressed his. Every head turned. He rose slowly, no swagger, no theatrics. Just a man unfolding from years of fatigue into unmistakable posture. Shoulders squared, chin steady, eyes suddenly sharp with a discipline the officers in row 3 had only begun to understand. A flight attendant approached, clearly confused. "Sir, were you a military aviator?" He nodded once, quietly, almost gently. "What's your call sign?" another attendant asked, reading from the captain's urgent request form. The man paused, then spoke a 2-syllable word that left every young officer in the forward rows frozen. A call sign whispered with reverence at fighter bases. A call sign spoken only in stories of impossible sorties. A call sign associated with one of the most decorated F-22 pilots to ever fly. The cabin went dead silent. The young officers stared at him, their arrogance cracking like glass. One officer whispered it again, voice barely audible. "That's him. That's that call sign." The realization washed over them like cold water. The man in 12F, the one they'd walked past without a glance, had flown missions they had only studied in simulations. Moments later, the cockpit door opened. The captain himself stepped out, face drawn with urgency and awe. "Sir, is it really you?" The single father gave a modest nod.
The captain didn't shake his hand. He gripped it like someone holding on to the final missing piece of a crisis he was trying to solve. "We have a malfunctioning navigation relay. Ground controllers said if your call sign was truly on board, you'd know what to do." The single father followed him toward the cockpit, calm, steady, quiet. The entire cabin watched him pass, some rising slightly from their seats without realizing it. The young officers stood instinctively at attention. The same men who mocked civilians minutes earlier now couldn't even meet his eyes. Inside the cockpit, a conversation unfolded in low, controlled tones. He spoke with precision, diagnosing the issue with a clarity only decades of combat flying could carve into a person. Minutes later, the captain returned to the cabin. "We're stable," he announced, thanks to him. When the plane landed, the young officers approached him near the gate. No arrogance, no loud jokes, just humility. "Sir, we didn't know," one murmured. He looked at them, tired but kind. You shouldn't need to know someone's history to treat them with respect. The officers swallowed hard. He continued, "In the air, on the ground, strength isn't measured by who talks the loudest. It's measured by who carries their responsibilities quietly." It was not a reprimand. It was a lesson, and it hit harder than any punishment. Weeks later, at a fighter base in Nevada, the story of the commercial flight spread like wildfire. "The call sign showed up on a civilian jet," someone whispered. "Sat in economy, seat 12F, single dad apparently." To the new trainees, it became a legend, not of a hero in a flawless flight suit, but of a man who carried greatness without announcing it. Some officers said the moment changed how they viewed rank. Others said it changed how they treated strangers. All agreed that humility could sit quietly in economy class, while arrogance strutted through first. The man from 12F never sought recognition. He never told the story. He simply returned to his life, raising his child, carrying his quiet burdens, and leaving the skies safer than he found them. But among pilots, his lesson lived on. Respect should not be reactive. It should be instinctive. On his refrigerator, the single father kept his child's drawing, the same one that peeked from his backpack that day. A reminder of the only title he truly cared about, Dad. When asked years later what he thought of that flight, he answered only this: "If arrogance flies high, humility flies higher."